Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money Podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, today I have Bill Bymel on the line, and he's Managing Director over at Spurs Capital. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
All right, so excited to get into today's topic. So we're going to talk about creating win-win solutions to defaulted mortgages. We're also going to get into your book a little. So I know you're author of Win-Win Revolution, so excited to talk more about that. But before we do, let's get a little bit further into Spurs Capital. Tell us a little bit more about the firm, please.
Sure. Adam, Spurs Capital was founded out of the last mortgage crisis in 2009. We are an investor in whole loan residential mortgages, primarily in default. So we buy anywhere from a few loans to large pools of residential single family and condo mortgages that have stopped performing. Either the borrower lost a job or died or some other default has occurred, and banks need to unload these loans off their balance sheets once they stop performing. So we have the ability to buy those loans at a discount to their face value, and then we make our money working out the resolutions with borrowers each individually.
And I think that's a great transition to today's topic. So creating win-win solutions to defaulted mortgages. I mean, you're the expert in doing that. Where do you want to start with this topic?
You know, it's a good question, Adam. When I got into this business, one of the big concerns I had, which was just over a decade ago, as people were losing their homes, as mortgages were defaulting in huge numbers, and the economy was cratering in similar ways that we see today. One of my concerns was the vulture aspect of buying discounted mortgages and then having to go collect from borrowers. So when my partners and I got into this business, we really set forth with the expectation that we wanted to create a paradigm for investment management that really helped all of the parties involved. We see ourselves as a service to banks by providing liquidity to non-performing assets. But more importantly, when it comes to dealing with individual borrowers, rather than being a large bank or servicer with really just a set of rules that borrowers have to abide by, we take each case individually and we look to our borrowers to guide us on what they think would be the best possible resolution to avoid a foreclosure. Now, granted, some people just can't afford the home they're living in, or something may have happened where we have to foreclose on a property, and that happens about 20 to 30% of the time. But when we're coming into contact with people who have defaulted, they're in a very tough place in their life. And having had these experiences personally and known people who went through the hell of having to deal with mortgage servicers during the last crisis, we really wanted to set a new structure in place. So we listened to our borrowers. Our first option as private equity investors is to keep borrowers in their home. If they're behind on payments and they couldn't make 1 month's payment, how are they going to bring a loan current with 6 or 7 missed payments? So we work with them and we say, you know what, we'll roll some of these payments off. In many cases, we're giving debt forgiveness, or we're giving forgiveness of fees or excess interest. We're passing along some of the savings we're getting from the banks and institutions that we're buying this paper at back to our borrowers in the form of cash for keys, reductions, trial modifications, opportunities to either retain their property or walk away with dignity, with a waiver of deficiency, not having to have a foreclosure, not having to have a bankruptcy on their record. So that's really what our paradigm is about as investors. So, and in doing so, we really have found the result to be the old saying that you catch more flies with honey. So, in creating a win-win environment for our borrowers, we are finding that our returns to our investors are that much better as a result of the dignity and personalization by which we deal with each individual borrower.
Man, that's awesome. Let's get a little bit into your book. So, Win-Win Revolution. What was the inspiration for this?
Yes. I've always wanted to call myself an author. So
I love it. Hold on, that's a good inspiration. I love it. Somebody that's honest. Thank you.
Let's be frank. It's an ego boost.
That's awesome.
When I got into this business, we started doing what we were doing. It was 2009, 2010. And the world was in crisis at the time. People had lost their jobs. People had walked away from houses. There was, banks were disappearing in droves. And, the experiences that I had on the ground when we were starting to implement this paradigm for loss mitigation, which is when we approach a borrower, we're not talking about debt collection. We're talking about how can we make your life better. We don't come in as judge and jury to these borrowers. We don't come in expecting them to write us these checks to just make it all go away. We really sit with each individual borrower and look and tailor the agreement for how this is going to unwind. We tailor it to everybody's individual needs. So when in the course of doing this over the past decade, I've had some really wild experiences. And as a guy with decades of experience in real estate mortgage industry, every day I go out and operate in this industry, I learn something new. I have an experience that either is inspiring or a cautionary tale. And there have been plenty of times where I've learned a hard lesson trying to be helpful to a borrower, only to have them strip a kitchen dry. So, all of these lessons that I've learned along the way really built up in my mind. In about 2015, 16, the market was starting to settle down. We had a little less default in the real estate business. My job got a little easier. We were getting our resolutions done. And I said to myself, there's just so many stories here for both the investor that wants to get into our business to learn from the cautionary tales, but more importantly, the moments of inspiration. For example, I sat down in a mediation with a gentleman who was a roofer who is about $50,000 behind on his mortgage. This was his home that he had planned to spend the rest of his life in. His loan had been sold from bank to bank. Nobody would return his phone calls. Nobody would work with him. So when I sat down with that gentleman, and he came with his arms crossed, so to speak. He came with a wall of, this is just another banker asking me for money I don't have. And after 3 hours of sweating in a room with the guy and making him believe that I cared about his situation and wanted to work with him, ultimately we found a way to modify his loan, lower his principal balance down to a point where he had equity back in his house, let him restart his life and his mortgage with us. And now, years later, I get Christmas cards from the guy every year. So those moments of inspiration I wanted to share with the world. I felt like it was my little way of paying it forward for what we're trying to do both in our business and to do better in our communities.
Now, that's awesome. So, Bill, that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Spurs Capital or to pick up a copy of your book, what's the best way for them to connect with you and your team?
Sure. I have a personal website that will lead you to all of my companies as well. It's billbymel.com, my first and last name, all one word. billbymel.com, BILLBY, M as in Mary, BYMEL.com, and that will take you to my various company websites, Spurs Capital, RSI Asset, retail sites, and NPN Capital. We're right now preparing some new funds for amazing opportunities that lie in the days ahead, and you can reach out to me through the website.
Fantastic.
Did you also want to hear that my book was available on Amazon? Just look up Win-Win Revolution. If you are a Kindle Unlimited reader like myself, you actually can read the book for free.
Get them. That's what I like to hear, Bill. Like myself, too. I'm going to be reading it. I love it. I got to hear some more of these stories because that was a killer one you gave us today. That being said, Bill, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about all the great work you're doing over at Spurs Capital and also your book, Win-Win Revolution. So great stuff there. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Money, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Bill, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks again, Adam.